All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of LLD Conversations. It is my honor to be here today with Reem Elkady, all the way joining us from Dubai. It's evening time over there, 12 hours ahead. And Reem is the CEO and founder of 360 Smart Lingo, an interpretation translation organization that represents multiple languages covering the entire world. Does a lot of work here in the US as well as in the Middle East. So Reem, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, David, for having me. It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much. And actually, our company is based out of the US and Dubai too. So It is a pleasure. You're my weekend last call. So
yeah, your weekend should have already started, but we appreciate you being with us here as your weekend is already kicked off and sharing some of your insights. And the reason why we do this podcast is to be able to bring to light some of the languages of lesser diffusion that don't get as much attention in our industry, and to hear from leaders like yourself who have been doing this for a long time and can really help inspire others that are wanting to further their career, wanting to get more training. What do those opportunities look like? But first, we want to learn a little bit about you.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your interpreter translator background. How did you get started in our industry?
Well, it's not a fun story to say, but it started, I was actually a clinical pharmacist. I hold a PharmD, and I was working for almost like 7 years in that industry. But I fell into interpretation because I couldn't agree with a lot of things that was in my previous industry, and I couldn't want to do it anymore, wanted to be close to the medical industry, but yet not do what I was doing. So someone came up to me and said, hey, there's a new field. It was pretty new in Egypt. I was living in Egypt back then. Pretty new. No one heard about interpretation before. We didn't know it. There is an account that is doing interpretation that's starting in Egypt. Why don't you join? And that's how I joined interpretation. I worked in it. It was pretty thrilling time for me as an interpreter, honestly. I enjoy it. I still enjoy it. I still take some calls here and there because I really do love what interpretation stands for, like giving voice to people who can't do what you're doing, do what they're doing without you. This is something that I haven't found that rewarding experience in anywhere where I worked. So I worked as a medical interpreter for around 8 or 9 years before I decided to start my business. And I started my business actually in Turkey. And the way it started was during the pandemic, where all the expat community was losing their jobs. And I was not, unfortunately, but our work was getting really good. So the expat community there were losing their jobs. I wanted to help in one way or another. So I started talking on groups and stuff about the existence of the interpretation career, and people were like surprised. They didn't know that they can use their languages from the comfort of their home and do a meaningful thing, which interpretation and translation. We help people communicate, So I started training people, and then I started I started my business pretty much from there, like training and then allocating people in different with different clients, and just it started as a one-woman show, and now it has grown to what it is right now. So yeah, that's pretty much my interpretation background. In translation too, I've worked on multiple projects, and while we're doing it, I wasn't back like in Egypt. It is not. It's hard, I know, to find good calibers and specialized calibers in our languages because of the variation in dialects and variation in the contextual way that the language is put together. So I worked as a translator. I didn't enjoy it as much as interpretation, honestly. But in interpretation, you get to experience a lot of different things in one day. Like you can get a call with someone who's giving a baby, then have a banking call, then have this. So it's pretty much thrilling to be an interpreter, always on your toe. It is a pretty rewarding career. So yeah.
Yeah, ready. You have to be ready for anything. That's for sure. You never know. And yeah. I getting to hear your story as well. When we got together here a few months ago when you were visiting in Southern California, and hearing your story of just someone who is very courageous, I would say, and just being able to just take a risk, take a chance, move to Dubai, and yeah, just like that, because you felt that calling to do that. Tell us a little bit about what is it like living in Dubai, and what are the languages that are spoken there? What does the interpretation scene look like there?
So the point where we decided to move to Dubai was when we actually visited here and saw Dubai is an insanely diverse city. It is a small city, yet there's more than 250 nationalities here. So like the population is around 3.5 million. Imagine 200 nationalities within those. And we saw that no one is advocating for language accessibility. So there's a huge community of Indian and Asian speakers here, huge community of Russian, Ukrainian moving because of the war. So, but still, when you walk into a hospital, they don't get accessibility in their own language. Even the locals of the country do not get healthcare in their own language. So I would say it is still not a very well-established and like a well-established access here for language in healthcare, which is a problem that the country has taken some steps. Like there's a law that came out that dictates that patients have the right to receive interpretation in their and health care services in their own language, but it is not still applied. So I always joke and say, like, we are in the Middle East 30 years behind the US in that matter. But they are very perceptive to the importance of that here, which is a very good thing. We're working with the government on that because the more and more every year, just now 5,000 new Russian came to Dubai since the beginning of the year. So wow. By that huge influx of people, you need to support them in healthcare and education. Schools, the Chinese community is a huge community here, and schools do not have any support for parents and parents-teacher meetings or anything. So it is still a pretty white market, but someone needs to speak up, and that's why we came here.
Excellent. Wow, you said 215 cultures.
250
different cultures, and 3 million individuals living there. It's that's incredible. How do you see, from your perspective, with the advancement of AI, how do you see that influencing our interpretation and translation industry?
Oh, I would say, David, in interpretation, I'm finding it difficult to still comprehend that it could be a productivity tool. It is a productivity tool. It is an assisting tool, but I'm hearing interpreters really worried about their jobs, and they're scared that AI is going to replace us. But you have to understand that the essence of interpretation is to facilitate communication, and communication is not only words like a machine can do. There is cultural sensitivities, there is context, there is sensitive situations, there is dialect difference, accent differences. All of these things, I would say AI is not able to comprehend human complexity yet, I would say, but till now, I see AI as an immense tool that will help us in our jobs, help the interpreters in their jobs. You need to use it. You need to lead the change. Do not resist it, but it is not going to replace the human touch that we need in interpretation. You don't want, a patient wouldn't want to speak to a machine while they are in distress. You know, they want to talk to someone who will understand and facilitate that communication. So the medical domain is I would say there's a very long way, or even never AI could replace a human interpreter, but definitely like our interpreters now could use AI in like captioning, so it helps them speed up the interpretation, limit that they ask for repetition, things like that. But I'm very excited about what it has to bring to our language industry in general, but I'm not worried it is going to replace us at all.
What opportunities do you see right now for those new interpreters maybe who have just started, or interpreters that are just getting started, and maybe they represent languages of lesser diffusion? What training opportunities do you see for them, and how can someone advance their career as an interpreter? What should they do?
So we in our company we think about interpretation as levels. So we segregate them that way. So there's level 1 interpreter, 2, 3, and 4 interpreters. So level 1 is the basic interpretation. Level 2 is community. When you get to level 3, you start to specialize. So if you are not specialized in it right now, the very first step is to get training and get certified or get accredited to become a specialized interpreter, be it medical, and then later on, once you gain more expertise, because legal is thought of as a harder type of interpretation. So once you go through all the interpretation levels, then it is a good time to think about, okay, how can I use my language to be more specialized? We have our interpreters on track from consecutive interpreters to simultaneous interpreters, and we give them other options. So there's a lot of things that you could do with your interpretation acumen that can help you. There's a lot of trainings. CCHI has a lot of trainings out there listed, companies listed there. You can look for that. Getting accredited is an amazing, certified is an amazing thing that is an addition to you. But also I've always said that to my interpreters, you will never know everything because you literally are exposed to an infinite number of scenarios. So continuous education, learning about the type of calls that you get. So if your account gets you a lot of ophthalmology calls, learn about that field more and more, and that will give you an edge. It will make your life easier. It will make your renditions easier, and it will make it of higher quality. Look into simultaneous interpretation. That is also another challenge. Like this is the when we think about interpretation, this is the highest of all, like the hardest of all to get to. And specializing, and don't be just another interpreter. And the way for you to not be another interpreter is by knowledge, knowing more about the field that you are interpreting in.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And for people that maybe are wanting to take their interpretation to the next level, and maybe they're only doing one mode of interpreting, let's say they're just doing on-site and they want to look at remote options, how would someone that was maybe only an on-site interpreter wanting to get into over the phone or video interpretation, how would they get started?
By training. It is very important because people think that on-site interpretation is this. If I'm an interpreter, I can do any mode. OPI and VRI interpreters cannot do on-site without training because the situations are different, the tools that you have are different, the type of interactions you're having are different. So you gotta have to have specialized training in the protocols, the code of conduct, how to handle the specific situation. Note taking is a huge part of remote interpretation that on-site interpreters don't have to work with that often as much as the virtual interpreters, and vice versa. So there is a lot that you need to learn about the protocol. So training is a key for that move. And there's a lot of online self-paced interpretation, very prestigious interpretation trainings out there that would help in that transition.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Even YouTube has some already.
That's excellent feedback, because I know a lot of our audience will find themselves in those different scenarios, and just getting that expert opinion from you is very helpful. So as we wrap up here, we're almost at time. One message that you'd want to leave with of inspiration for our interpreter community today.
I would say don't think about interpretation as a side job. It doesn't have to be. It is a very rewarding career. You are doing a lot of good. It is financially rewarding once you get yourself into it properly, and once you stand out in the industry. It is a very rewarding career. Interpretation doesn't have to be a side hustle. And you can grow. There's a misconception that interpreters are going to be always interpreters. I am one testament. I was an interpreter. Yes, I started a business, but I have a lot of my team. We call it by interpreters for interpreters, because the entire team were interpreters at one point and still are, some of them. So there's a lot that you can do with that science and that skill. So don't give up and don't treat it as a side hustle.
I love that. And I'm in the same boat right there with you as a former medical interpreter as well. So that's how I started out, and so very similar, a lot of similarities with our stories there, going from interpreter to now the CEO and founder of a company as well. So great feedback. I love that, because it is so important for interpreters for us to look at this not as a side hustle. Although in our industry it's unique, in order to take that side hustle to be that full-time profession, it does take a lot of hustle and a lot of grit to
Yes.
create that for you. And I think that's really what Reem is so eloquently speaking to. So Reem, thank you so much for joining us. And again, I know it's later there. Appreciate you.
I really enjoyed it, David. Thank you so much.
Being here with us on your Friday evening. So thank you. And we'll be excited to share this with our NCIHC community. Thank you all for tuning in, and until next time.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Have a good day.